Well, media magnate Rupert Murdoch has launched a high-stakes bid to make people pay for their online news. The News Corp boss plans to charge for content on all his newspaper sites within a year. Well, earlier I spoke to Bernard Hickey, managing editor of interest.co.nz, which supplies money news online for free. And I began by asking him if he thinks Murdoch will succeed in getting the punters to stump up.
I don't think so. Essentially, the genie is well out of the bottle. It's big and it's ugly, and he can't get it back in. This is his problem. People expect the only price on the internet now to be free. Zero is the only price that works for news, apart from in some specialist areas like high-value financial news. Now, he's been fooled, I think, into believing that the model that the Wall Street Journal uses, because Murdoch now owns the Wall Street Journal, will actually work for his other newspapers. But people will simply not pay for general political, sports, entertainment or crime news. They will pay for very, very high-value financial news, but that's not what he's trying to sell. He's trying to sell access to the Times Online or the Sun or the Australian. And frankly, people will not pay when there's so much choice around these days from many other free sources, particularly blogs, but also television websites, radio websites, and the Wires websites. And of course, the all-enveloping power of Google to distribute all of that news from those free sources.
Given that, how do you expect Rupert Murdoch's competitors to respond?
Well, they're sitting there hoping that he succeeds, many of those competitors, because they would too like to put prices on their websites. But it's a classic prisoner's dilemma problem for him. No one wants to be the first one over the wire because they'll probably get shot. And they want to see Rupert Murdoch succeed, but if he fails, all the better, because that means more people coming to their websites for free.
Bernard, what are we looking at here then? How much of a threat is this to the entire Murdoch empire?
Well, Murdoch is quite diversified. He's also managed to free himself of a lot of debt. So he's in actually a stronger position than many others who are reliant on newspaper revenues alone. So the likes of the New York Times, the Boston Globe, the LA Times, many of which are already in receivership or close to it. So Murdoch is probably better placed than most, but he has a long-term problem, particularly in newspapers, which is the bedrock of his empire at the moment. Those revenues are going to dry up, and quite quickly in the United States, for example. And so he has to find another way, or he has to reduce his costs drastically. I think in the long run he'll have to turn off those printing presses, particularly for those daily newspapers, and that will reduce his costs incredibly. But overall, the whole news business is transferring online in some shape or another. And media publishers will have to reduce their cost bases markedly to survive in this new world.
People have been talking about the demise of the newspaper for years and years, but nevertheless, some people still like to have the feel of the newsprint in their hand every day, don't they?
That's right, and there will be a large chunk of the population for another 10, 20 years who will do that. And we may see weekly newspapers continue. But the end of the daily newspaper, where people expect to pick up their paper in the morning and read stuff which they hadn't seen before. Now when you pick up your daily newspaper, you've probably seen most of it the day before online or on television or on radio. Or in fact, you may have well seen the news on the newspaper's website the previous day. So what's the point in paying $1 or maybe $2 or $3 that you have to pay in New Zealand now and in other places for news that you've already seen before? And so the newspapers will have to transform themselves from journals of record that produce daily news every day to something else. Maybe they become opinion journals, or they become places for stand-back type news that you see now in magazines. So that era of daily news publishing is ending. It may take another decade or two, certainly here in New Zealand. It may end a bit sooner in places like the United States, where the internet is more endemic and where people have so many choices now for news.
This is happening at a time when, especially in the music industry, consumers more and more are expecting and wanting to pay nothing to get access to music. Is Murdoch, in a way, going against the tide here?
That's right, and in fact he's trying to turn back the tide, and I'm saying there is no point. As the music industry found, the wave that's coming their way is just too big. You either have to swim with it or get out of the way. Trying to put your hand up and stop it is a waste of time, and we've seen now that the music industry has been overwhelmed by the power of downloading. And now you see the power in the music industry shifting to the music promoters, the Live Nations of the world, rather than the music recorders. And you see artists like Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails making his money by selling boxed DVD sets and T-shirts and going on tour, like the olden day musicians who used to make their money by playing at pubs. Now all those musicians will have to go back to doing that too.
Bernard Hickey there of interest.co.nz. Well, let's take a look at what else is making business news tonight. And American investors have welcomed evidence of an economic recovery.